That's not to say people from like Eindhoven don't deserve a clap or something, but it's just an extra long way. So his presentation is called Visual Conclusion in Comics and Computer Graphics. So, Francisco, welcome.
Uh, so, hello everybody. Um, let's start. My father is an engineer, so since I was very young, I buy handmade mock-ups. Later on, this helped me to get acceptable grades in right school and a job in a traditional architecture office of my hometown. In this office, currently, they don't design small neoclassical arcs, which in case of São Paulo, with its architectural aberrations, constitutes a miracle in itself. Here are some mock-up pictures I showed to you. After some time, I became a little obsessed with this mock-up business. At times, you can go to a whole week without speaking to anybody. In this type of work, I guess it is some like coding. So, in an attempt to overcome my Robinson Crusoe syndrome, I ended working in a cultural center controlled by the city and located on a very central point and very easy to get into. After some days in this place, working directly with visitors, I had to go to a speech therapist not to become deaf. In my country, cultural centers are scarce. São Paulo is a root city, and who lives in the other edges of the city has little or no access to culture. There is a root need for it. In this way, a cultural center is more like a cultural emergency room. People come from all over to visit. So, I have known this place since I was a child, and after working there for 2 years in the executive sector, I presented last July, by my own initiative, a proposal for an annual course about Blender. This course would be intended to public school students. Unfortunately, it did not raise much interest on the side of the management regarding the implementation of this idea. So I didn't have anything else to do there, for the time being at least. It is with a certain regret that I say that, because I find it is extremely rewarding to have the opportunity to work with these kids. So here we are seeing some pictures I made about for the course presentation. It is in GIMP format, GIMP file. I am working on a translation now, and I will post as soon as possible the translation for this course. Soon you will have an English version. Anyway, I am very happy to look back and notice that this proposal approached the context of the city in a relatively precise way. The cultural center has an excellent accessibility and a public use terminal. Another educational activity I was lucky to start this year are some workshops for another institution called SESC, The managers of the commerce founded these institutions, and this institution and it also sponsor cultural centers. Even though they are short courses, SESC cultural units are strategically spread over the state. So this becomes a good way to take Blender to remote regions because of this distance problem we have in Brazil. Okay. Oh no, this guy is going to read all the time. Unfortunately, it will be necessary to tell you the truth. Mr. Miyagi's, Karate Kid stuff, or Master Yoda English much better than mine. Or I ask for a little patience from you. If you have to ask some question, it would be excellent if you could write in a piece of paper in Portuguese. Just kidding. If you have any questions, please ask it slow and loud, okay? Anyway, forgive me this parrot style presentation and to ask your question. Because of my difficulty on communicating, and because I do not want that you fall asleep during my speech, I decided to prepare a presentation with many pictures. I will try to discuss here, and it has a theoretical relation with what I have been teaching, something about the relationship between two pictures. Mainly, when we intend that put side by side, they form a narrative sequence. And what does all of this have to do with Blender? Some of you might be asking. I will answer this question for now with two instigations. Outdated, maybe, but very relevant at the moment regarding some problems we are facing as a virtual community. To avoid the risk of seeming extremely unpleasant right from the start, I am not going to tell about these instigations without explaining myself first. Mainly because the first of these instigations could directly hurt our hosts, which is by no means my intention. I would like to make it clear that I am a great fan of the Dutch design, and I am bringing these instigations in the spirit of what I believe to be the essence of the Blender community, its collaborative spirit. So this is on an attempt to initiate this live dialogue with you, okay? Okay, then, here we go. Instigation number one, which you can relate to rendering process on Flemish painting. In Flanders, they paint with a view to deceiving sensual vision, such things as may share you, and of which you cannot speak ill, as, for example, saints and prophets. They paint stuffs and masonry, the green grass of the fields, the shadow of the trees, and rivers and bridges, which they call landscapes. With many figures on this side and many figures on that, and all of this, to please some persons, is done without reason or art, without symmetry or proportion, without skillful selection or boldness, and finally, without substance or vigor. Nevertheless, there are countries where they paint worse than Flanders. And I do not speak so ill on Flemish painting because it is all bad, but because it attempts to do so many things well, each one of which could suffice for greatness that it does none well. Well, this excerpt is from Michelangelo. Of course, he is known as a completely perfectionist person. That is, one could call him neurotic. But when I surf some 3D community galleries and I remember this passage, it always sent me a shiver down the spine, exactly for invariably coming across projects based on ultra-realistic starting points. This takes us to instigation number 2, referring on a certain way to animation process. Will, young, be truthful, but it's not mean be vulgarly accurate. Nowadays, there is an inherent exactness from the photography and calculation. Art begins only with interior truth. All its forms and all its colors should translate feelings. The artist who conforms himself with a simple imitation and reproduces details subserviently will never become a master. If one of ever has visited an Italian cemetery, must certainly have noticed the childish way the artists in charge of decorating the tombs dedicate to copying their statues, the embroiderings, the rabbets, the braids. They might be accurate, but they are not truthful, as they do not direct themselves to the soul. Well, this is an excerpt by Auguste Rodin. I have stressed 2 problems that, in a certain way, are still central. The first one deals with a fetishist relationship we can nourish regarding the surface of the objects. The second one is related to a question that today will be controversial exactly because it is linked to a forgotten legacy. At a certain period, 2 pictures to demonstrate the unfolding of one only action were considered lack of ability on the part of the artist. Some complaints of the public that are reminiscence of these ghosts and which we perhaps should analyze. These animations, such as Shrek or Finding Nemo, are too perfect. They end up becoming cold. They are anything but cartoons. Or else, comics prevent kids from reading books. From a certain point of view, they limit imagination. Scott McCloud, in his book Understanding Comics, has already duly opposite this the misconception regarding comics as a lesser art form. At this moment, I am more worried about the unfolding of the first complaint of the public, too perfect animations. I would like, as far as possible, to suggest an extension of some concepts proposed by McCloud to Blender's creative process. This will not be possible, however, without going back in a preliminary way to this concept. And no, this is not supposed to be a comic book marketing campaign. From transitions between one picture and another, MacLeod created a very subjective, however efficient, classification on interpretation we eventually can attribute to that. The phenomenon of narrative comprehension that occurs between a picture and another one is called conclusion. For example, similarly, we can see in the slides a man taking off his hat and greeting us. This is the point that I would like you to, I'd like to invite you to discuss. According to MacLeod, there are 6 types of transition between pictures. The first one is moment to moment. I have prepared this card so you can pass this. It was an attempt to get closer to their original, to its original media, the comic books. Well, imagine a film reel from which we took 2 pictures close to each other. The modifications would be almost unnoticeable. That is the case with this young woman, Lincoln, or the other examples that we have presented here. Well, this is the second example, action to action. It's similar to the first one, but it is as if we took 2 pictures that were more distant from our imaginary film reel. The understanding of the action is more economic, therefore. It would be as if we took the pictures more incisive to the action that we intend to represent. In the third type, subject to subject, we have a camera movement showing 2 or more angles of one scene. Besides, we can notice a displacement of characters or objects focused, as in the race example, where we first had someone crossing the finish line, and after that, a stopwatch. These interpretations do change, of course, from individual to individual. However, this last characteristic, the diversity of approach, give us the parameter to differentiate this type of transition from action to action. Okay? Scene to scene. Now I move to the fourth type, scene to scene. In the third type, we have a radical change of point of view. Here, we also have a root displacement in time, as it can be observed in the examples that follow. Luckily, we lack only 2 types of classification to be described. It is very simple, as a matter of fact. They are aspect to aspect, very common on Oriental, Eastern language, you know what I mean, Japanese and Chinese, affusion, different compositions of the same place are focused, helping to compose the emotional mood of the message to be conveyed. Coming to this point, I cannot avoid imagining a scene master sliding my truth because of this simplistic explanation. And finally, non sequitur. Here we don't have any logical relationship in the picture sequence. Unfortunately, I did not have in my collection a transition of this type, so I create this bricolage myself. The human mind, however, works quickly trying to establish logical links. So I am simplifying when I say no relationship, okay? So finished at least. McCloud's goes much deeper. If any of you are interested, please ask me for detailed bibliography later on. Now that we have heard about these definitions, you might be probably thinking that I am going to draw a parallel between animation and these concepts. But this is not exactly my idea. To tell the truth, I would like to compare this vision of narrative units with some aspects of 3D modeling. When we study these small narrative units, we are able to avoid a certain deadlock imposed to so-called multimedia arts. For example, some accuse video games for causing a certain narrative exhaustion. That is true. I am not complaining and asking, where are the adventure video games or things like that? No, that's not the point. I am suggesting that maybe we could overcome the situation by deepening the perception of the public. We can leave more clues so that they understand our creative process. A practical example is a good idea in this situation. So you can finally understand what the hell I am talking about. And the wise guys finally have the opportunity to leave the room saying, let me get out of here. This guy is not serious. Oops. Okay, this is not my laptop, so this is much more faster on Linux. This laptop is from the most special girl in the world, and I just have this example in the Windows. It's possible to use executable files generated with the game engine to combine different stages of our creative process. This can help people starting with Blender to visualize a possible way to reach a certain result. It would not be so difficult having two simple navigation systems like that to make a kind of creative description of our projectual process. The square of the right would allow navigation across the drawings that that gave birth to the character or scene foxy. The right side allows to virtually manipulate the geometry. How do you normally organize your modeling files? I like I like to copy the intermediate models, as it gives the opportunity to have an idea about the sequence of the model creation. Filmed tutorials illustrate this well, even though they do not show all the stages simultaneously as proposed here. Look how interesting. It is possible to use the transition among video game scenes to navigate between two creative environments. They could be environments considered more relevant for understanding the model. In one of the scenes, there would be a model finisher or something like that, and the different animations made for it. A character that moves forward when we press double, runs when we hit air, and so on. In the following scene, we can focus the geometric approach used to create this character. First, this register can be very interesting for our future reference. It is very interesting to see again some work we have made some time ago and notice, whoa, look at that. Then I used to model that way. Moreover, I believe that to show these intermediary stages to people afraid of computers can encourage them to get involved with the digital creative process. And at the same time, we can unveil the way these objects are created. Don't DVDs have production stress? Don't we feel attracted by the steps that reveal some of the mysteries of the creative process? The tutorials made by countless patient members of the Blender community are typical examples of where this conclusion process we studied are employed. In some of these tutorials, it is possible to download the model so that the user can finish it. In these files, elaborated sometimes in a very discerning way, intermediate modeling stages could be shown. This can be helpful for those who are starting to develop their abilities in three-dimensional representation. It is clear that by proceeding in this way, our work is more vulnerable to criticism. But depending on whom it comes from, it can be worthwhile. Perhaps the most insightful thing to see today in Da Vinci's drawings, it's able to notice, even in a fragmentary manner, the way this great master goes from one sketch to another on the same piece of paper. Or still, the association among subjects that his brilliant mind made about 500 years ago. So, that's my proposal. A logbook of projects, a work in progress, constructed in a very simple way from .blend files, or still, in other words, quote, "It is as if to describe it figuratively. A writer committed a mistake, and this mistake became aware of itself. Perhaps it has not been an error, but on a higher level, an essential part of the entire composition. It is then as if this error rebelled against the writer, and for pure retreat, it prevented the writer from correcting it and said, "No, I will not be erased. I will remain as a witness against you that you are an insignificant writer." End of quote. Perhaps this excerpt from D.D. Salinger goes much further than my subject, but maybe it has made this presentation worthwhile. Now we can play dominoes or soccer ball during the time left, or make a coffee break. We can play mimic if you want. Seriously, I would not finish my speech without thanking all the programmers who participate in a more direct way in the creation of this software, and to really stress the importance the idea called Blender has in a country like mine. As you may imagine, the most popular computers in Brazil are not able to run Revit programs such as 3D Studio or Maya. The lightness of Blender and every one of its lines written with love and affection, filled with enthusiasm, younger kids living in poor areas much less favored than mine, to develop his artistic skills, exactly because Blender works well in their computers. So not only programming attains a vital importance for the community, but also all the infrastructure of tutorials strenuously considered by Bart Valduzen and other members. I'm sorry, Bart, I am your unconditional fan, but I was not able to find a tutorial on the net that could teach me how to pronounce your name. I missed the Blender path from the NAN time. Why did we change such a nice name? Doesn't matter. Now there is a wikipedic that seems to make this idea up one more time. Thanks for your patience.